Hi there. Are you the introvert who's found yourself so paralyzed with self doubt and fear because you felt like maybe you were not like charismatic or you just don't want to show in front of other people? If that's you, this video is for you. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Irene Gathur, and I'm a mom who's in my late 50s, recently empty nester. My younger son joined my oldest son in college. And now I have this latter half of my time to focus on building my legacy and doing a lot of things I'm so fearful to do. So, I'm going to tell you about my journey and some of the things I started to do that started to shift my ability to be able to do that. So, as long as I can remember, I've always been the person who would daydream. I would daydream so badly that when I took, especially in elementary school, I daydream to the point where, like, whenever it came time for taking exams, I'd forget to write my name. I'd forget stuff all the time because I've been one task, but my mind would wander a lot. And but one of the things that happened, excuse me, one of the things that happened was that I would have very vivid dreams, but my fear and self doubt stopped me from taking action. And I feel like the time it got worse, it was like I had a time in my life where I was a stay at home mom, which I really had a good time taking, raising my kids. Like I would not trade that time for anything else. But when it came time to go in the job market, it was really tough. A lot of things had changed since I was last at work. It was 7 years. Can you relate to that? Have you been a stay-at-home mom who struggled to get back into the workforce, to get back to the business? And for me, what happened was that I obviously was able to see a lot of my peers who work continuously and have a break in the work history. It was hard because in over the 7 years I was home with my kids, my identity was wrapped around my children, wrapped around being a wife. And it was just hard for me to be able to navigate from that life to be able to be in the place in the workforce. It was hard. I'm not going to, I'll kid you not. And also, too, as I did that, I was also starting to go like through menopausal transition. I had brain fog, I had all this stuff going on. I got frustrated with myself because I knew I could do better. I basically had lost my mojo and actually had an identity crisis. But there's a part of me that knew if I didn't do something about it, I would live a life with regret. And I felt miserable because I just felt as I could do better. By the time I was a hot mess. And I just would keep asking myself, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? I couldn't get an answer. And when I'm like in that space, what I typically go into this like place where I'm like, I'm going to research, I'm going to find out everything I can about how to change my life and how to solve the problems I have. So, what I started to do around the time of COVID, obviously, all of us were like, we could not really pretty much our lives came to a standstill. We're not interacting with friends and family. But for some reason, that was like the ideal time for me to come in the online space and start to try and figure out some things could happen. But one of the things that even though I was with a lot of trainers, I was a lot of trainers and I was exposed to some really amazing people. I was not able to take action because in a lot of ways, what I started to find myself thinking, I was thinking that I really didn't have value. I wasn't trusting my instincts. And so when I was being in mastermind groups, when I was being in coaching environments, I was thinking of myself as being an empty, like as empty that needed to be filled with knowledge from other people. That did not work. More recently, I was able to understand why it was so hard for me to take action because I was not finding value in myself. And instead of thinking of myself having solutions and getting to holding myself accountable, I would try programs and I would give up because no matter how much I took action, nothing was happening. Let me tell you where this really shifted for me. And if you're struggling with self doubt, struggling with like fear of what other people are going to think about it, fear of making mistakes, this is what changed for me. I happen to have been like, I'm an avid reader. The one book we changed, I couldn't believe I'd never heard any of all the trainings I've ever heard of. I had not heard somebody say so clearly, explain so clearly why it's going to be virtually impossible for me to change my life no matter what action I took. It all came down to my identity. And so this is what happens. Many of the times when we start with goals, we focus on the action. But at no point in the process, we're focusing on the action that will help us to accomplish a task. That's actually doing things backward. In order for you to actually have transformation, you have to know what it is you want to do, then ask yourself the question, what do you need to do in order to get that result? After you answer that question, the next thing you need to be asking yourself, which is really the primary thing, is your identity. The person who's going to be able to accomplish those things is going to have to be somebody who's probably know who you are today. So you have to work backwards and ask yourself, who do I need to become? What is that woman doing? Who is she? What kinds of things is she doing? And I'm not talking about faking till you make it, but the way you ought to be thinking about yourself is thinking of you behaving like the person you're becoming. And there'll be a point at which you'll be doing those things. And one day you wake up like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing the things that I wanted to do. So the key thing is to focus on your identity, working backwards. What is it that you want? What do you need to do? Who is that woman, version of yourself, that badass woman, that fierce woman that needs to show up to do those things? And then start acting as though you're already that person. And at some point, it all works out. So I heard this many times. I heard about Bob Proctor, I heard about a lot of things. But one of the things that I did not realize was how much our conscious mind actually rules a lot of the things we do. Our brains are lazy. It's so much easier to keep doing the things we've been doing all along. Change is really difficult. And the moment you decide you're going to change, like this morning, got up. I decided I was going to record this video. But what? Guess what happened? My mic wasn't working and I started to get really flustered. And I was like, you what, come rain come shine, this is happening, you're recording this video, and I'm glad I did it. So if you're struggling with being able to work past self-doubt and your fear, recognize the people who do audacious things, who are really bold, are not doing it because they're not scared. They are scared, but they choose to take the action because it's through taking action that you build confidence. It's through taking action that you start to have that transformation and becoming that person. I can tell you now, like every day, we think we're staying the same. There's circumstances in our life, there are things that happen in our life that are making us to be the person who we are. So I would love, love, love to invite you to a journey where you can think about the dreams you currently have. And as you think, excuse me, to think about the things you want to have is to ask yourself for the dreams you have, just think of the one dream you can focus on, because what sometimes happens, and this would happen to me, well, I'd get desperate to get like change in my life. I'd have 5 6 things happen at the end, but I wasn't focused enough to really have breakthrough in one area, because I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do 1 2 3 4, I'm gonna have these lists of things, are work on projects, working simultaneously to do that. And it doesn't work that way. When we are involved in a lot of things, our mind gets confused and we end up getting nothing done. And or even possibly we get overwhelmed. So I'm gonna invite you for anything to give you the opportunity to join me. And if you imagine, if you thought of the dreams you've had, the dreams you're not acting on, and And you might be feeling frustrated, feeling empty, wondering you have a life. It seems as though everything's going well, but deep inside, you ask yourself, you feel as though this nagging feeling, is there anything more to this? Is there anything more? Yes, there's more. There's more. But in order for your dreams to actually work, you must do the work to make them come to pass. And you don't necessarily have to know you're going to go from point A to point B. I can tell you for myself in this journey of trying to figure out what was wrong with my life, what was not going wrong, even though I did not actually get results over the last 3 years and not until recently, what helped me though was I was putting myself out there. And eventually I was able to find women who were farther along than I was, whose stories I was like, oh yeah, I can relate to. I once to start to hear when people really were vulnerable enough to tell me what was going on. I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. And that has started to give me the courage. That also helped me to learn about books, about people I could interact with. And that's what helped me. So some of the times when we're trying to pursue new goals, we are many times surrounded by family and friends who are so used to seeing us as we are that they cannot relate to maybe a version of yourself that will be bold to be able to accomplish dreams that are beyond your wildest, like your wildest imagination. And what is incredibly helpful is being clear about what it is you want and just start taking action. You don't have to know how point A to point B, but just start taking action and be consistent of one thing and still have breakthrough. And as you go from one thing into another, eventually your dreams start to become not just a figment of your imagination, but actually start to be real. So if I know for me and I know for you that one of the things that we all as humans will experience is doubt, excuse me, is regret. If we don't live our lives the way we feel those like urges and just like desires to really live a bold life, then we'll have regret. One thing we have is that we don't have do overs. So here's the thing, if this is something that interests you, I would like you to invite you to an empty nester bucket list challenge. In this challenge, we collectively can work together to conquer our doubts and build self confidence to be on the path of really getting to live out our audacious dreams. And let us turn our self limiting beliefs as stepping stones to do the things that God has called us to do. If that's of interest to you, please drop in the comments hashtag bucket list and I'll get back to you and send you the details. With that, have a blessed rest of your day.